Schulman, who is an absolute rock star. Jill, let me stop sharing so that you can come on screen with me. Hello, hello, and welcome. Do we have Jill on the spotlight?
I'm right here.
Yeah, yeah, here she is. Look how beautiful she looks in that pink jacket today. Thank you for joining us. All of my inter excuse me, all of my interactions with Jill have been uplifting. She has helped me think through a few of these things that I've just presented to you. Jill is an absolute goal-getter. She has the perfect topic for her personality because bravery um, is very related to kindness, as we are about to find out. So, Jill, I have two questions for you because I don't want you guys, all of you who are with us today, to just think about Jill as a bio. I want you to meet Jill as a human being. So, what is your secret superpower to stay kind, Jill, when things want to push you in a different direction?
I always just try to think about what is the impact I'm trying to have overall. My
Mm.
natural ability is I'm a hothead. I've had to work a lot on my emotional intelligence. So I always just think of what is it that I'm really trying to achieve by having this conversation? And that just ends up calming me down and allowing me to address things with kindness.
See, what I'm hearing here is that she's making values-based decisions in real time.
Not
All right, Jill, I had
always. I'm not perfect, but I try.
and that's all that we can do, right? We are all suffering to a certain degree at the moment, so trying is all that we can do. Now, Jill, I will pass it over to you right away because I know that you have more content to deliver than time for it, just like I did, and I don't want to take any more of your time. So, thank you for being here and take it away.
All right. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. So, I am going to be talking about a concept that is near and dear to my heart, which is brave conversations, which I believe, and I'm going to lay out the evidence on why it's an antidote to workplace incivility. Now, my background and the reason why I do research and I write and I speak on bravery probably stems from my background starting as a United States Marine. Um, and we'll go through a couple of those stories in a minute. I got to know MJ through the MAP program at Penn. So great to see a lot of my MAP friends here. It's a little bit about me. So we're going to talk about brave conversations. And the reason we're going to be talking about this is when you think about why people are rude, why they lash out, many times it's because they hold things in. They don't say anything when something's bothering them. And because now they're bothered, they're annoyed, they are fed up, they lash out. And we see that incivility. And I've got a story to share with you. I was working with a COO of an organization. This is a cancer research company. This woman I'm working with, she was a co-founder. Her co-founder was a CEO. And when I would talk to her, she would talk about how frustrated she was and how he wasn't doing this and she was doing all of that. And there's all these different problems. And I would ask her, um, what have you done? Have you had a conversation? And she always said, no, no, I'm not going to have a conversation. I'm just going to wait for it to go away. And when she made that decision to not have a brave conversation, it ended up leading her to lose so much sleep, for her to be so unhappy. And then finally, she would come to the breaking point and then she would blow up. And we see this so many times in organizations. As I work with leaders, leaders are sometimes afraid to give that constructive feedback. Someone sees a challenge or a problem with a project, but they're scared to make their voices heard. There's conflict between you and a cross-functional partner that's really holding back team collaboration and also results. But people don't want to say anything because they're scared to have the conversation. Now I'm going to tell you another story, and this is a good story. Now, this is going back to my Marine Corps days. Um, you guys, my first boss in the Marine Corps, so I was a combat engineer officer. All right. So just for everyone to know what that is, basically we build things and blow things up. It's a combat arm job. I'm one of the first women ever to serve as an officer in combat engineering. I'm not going to tell you what year this was because then you're going to know how old I am. It was a long time ago. And I was reporting into my first company commander. I was a platoon commander. So I'm leading a platoon of Marines. And the first week of my reporting in, my company commander, so the boss, led us on a run through the hills of Southern California because I was at Camp Pendleton. And the most embarrassing, shameful thing happened to me. And I realized I could not keep up to the pace of all the male Marines. Now, you guys, I gotta tell you how embarrassing this is. Like, as a Marine officer, I'm the one that showed up, that I'm the platoon commander in charge of my platoon. There was 4 platoons there. I was falling back, which means that my Marines were falling back. Eventually, I had to move over to the side and have my staff sergeant take the Marines forward because I couldn't keep up. So we get back. I'm already feeling horrible. My company commander says, Lieutenant Hastings, I need to see you in my office. And I'm like, well, here we go. I'm going to get my butt chewed. Um, but this was Captain Sinclair at the time, sat me down with so much empathy. And he was brave enough to have this conversation and said, I want to talk to you about what happened. He's like, I know you're in top physical fitness. He's like, I'm looking at your record. You have a score of 300 on physical fitness, based on the standards for women. You are literally, you can't score any higher on your physical fitness. I know you've worked hard. I know you're in great shape. He's like, but I really care about your success in leading, one of the first women ever to lead in a combat arm. It's not enough for you to meet or to exceed the women's standards. You've got to be able to work on it so that you are meeting the male standards for the Marines to respect you. So I say this with kindness, that we need to help you get stronger. So that was kind of the gist of the conversation, which of course was really hard to take. But at the same time, what a gift that he had that difficult conversation, right? And I worked at it, and I'm happy to report 2 years later, I was a top performing lieutenant in the entire battalion, and I was the one lieutenant, only female, that got selected to command a special operations unit that actually deployed overseas. And that would not have happened if Captain Sinclair would not have had that brave conversation. And I think about this story so many times, because I think if he wouldn't have said that, I could have just been like, well, I am meeting the high standard for women. But then what would have happened as a result? Then there probably would have been more incivility later as Marines looked at me with disrespect, right? So I am on a mission to help people be brave in many ways in life. And today we're going to focus on brave communications. All right, let me get back to my slides. So many times we see incivility in the workplace, out in personal life, and we've already seen the definition from MJ: rude, disrespectful, impolite behavior that violate these norms of mutual respect. All right, what causes this rude, disrespectful, impolite behavior? Right? Well, we'll talk about that in a moment. But sometimes the way this shows up is people lash out. And when I think of someone rude, I think of someone like yelling or lashing out. But there are other ways. That's the lashing out. People are just angry. That's kind of my go-to, because again, I've been working on my emotional intelligence. I'm aware of it. I take the pause, and now I don't do that. But some people just lash out. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, some people zip it. And they just are angry inside. And maybe they're not saying anything, but you can tell in the way they carry themselves, in the way they say, hello, right? And that was this COO that I was talking about. She held it in, and she thought she was not being rude, but she actually was doing more damage to the relationship with the CEO. She was doing more damage to the performance of her company because she wasn't willing to say anything. All right. Have you guys ever seen examples of that, where someone is being really rude, but in either a passive aggressive way or just keeping it in with their body language? Right? We've seen that. So I want us to keep in mind that rude, disrespectful, impolite behavior can be verbal, and it can also be with body language or people pulling back and not engaging. And I want to make a case today on how we don't want to be at either ends of the spectrum. We want to be able to have a brave dialogue about challenges, differences of opinion. When we can actually build trust and create higher level connections in life. So when we look at some of the research specifically in the workplace, the cost of not speaking up is incredible. And this is probably not a surprise. If you're not giving honest performance feedback, people are not going to grow. If you don't speak up in meetings, then your ideas are not going to get implemented. We may not innovate. If you avoid tough conversations about behavior, especially incivility, right? Those are not going to be changed. If you're not speaking about risk or concerns, as Amy Edmondson famously tells about in the hospital, where a nurse sees a challenge or a problem with the dosing and doesn't say anything, it can be devastating in terms of results. Withholding upward feedback. We need to be brave enough to sometimes give feedback to our bosses. We also have to be brave enough to sometimes ask for help when we don't know the answers. So if we look at the cost of silence, I now want to pose a question to all of you, and I'd like everyone to open up their chat, if you will. Why do people stay silent? In their mind, they have 100 words a minute going on what they think the right idea is and what something's a problem. Why do they choose not to say anything? Let's see that in the chat. Yes, fear of conflict, conflict avoidance. Yes. They think that there might be a worse outcome if they speak up. Yes. Tired of being shut down. They think that maybe Dana, that maybe they're the only one that thinks that way. So I see a theme here, being scared or having fear of ruining the relationship, fear of maybe the backlash of them speaking up. Yes, yes, yes. So if fear is the primary reason people stay silent, which causes all of those problems, how do we overcome fear? Well, this brings me to my area of expertise, which is bravery. The science of bravery is my life. So let's define what is bravery. So bravery is defined as voluntary action taken despite fear towards an important, moral, or worthwhile goal. All right, I want to let that sink in for a moment, and I want to break apart the components. So first of all, it's voluntary action. We decide to take action. Notice it doesn't say fearless in the definition of bravery. No, it says voluntary action despite fear. Right? So this is taking a step forward or raising your hand to speak up even when you're scared because it matters toward an important, moral, or worthwhile goal. So when it comes to communication in the workplace or communication in interpersonal relationships, I want to make a case, and I'm going to give you some strategies that you can implement right away and you can take back to your teams of how you can build your bravery muscle to actually break the silence and initiate a conversation that will increase the chances of it being successful. So just before I move on here, bravery is not being fearless. It's about being a little bit nervous or being scared and doing it anyways because it matters. And when it comes to communication in the workplace, it's imperative. Now, I've got a couple different little pictures here, and this is going to outline a point. If someone that you know from work walks out of the bathroom back into the meeting room and you see this, right? You guys can see the toilet paper. Has it ever happened to any of you? This has happened to me, right? What are you going to do? Are you going to say something to this gentleman? Let's put it in the chat. This is someone you know at work. Always, yes. Everyone's saying yes, 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 yes. So when it's inconsequential, absolutely. Oh, there's some toilet paper on your shoe. Like, oh, because you want to help him out. Yes, of course we're going to when the stakes are really low. Now let's go to the next one. Let's say one of your colleagues, your cross-functional colleagues, so a fellow leader in your organization, just led a 30-minute meeting, and this is the response of everyone in the meeting. It's not engaging. Hopefully, you guys are not feeling like this right now with me presenting, but it is not engaging. People were falling asleep. They were bored. It wasn't engaging. Of course, you want your fellow leader to be, more successful at meetings. It's not really your job, but do you say anything? Do you offer any suggestions in this circumstance to help a peer leader? Let's see that in the chat. Now, I'm going to see some hesitating because a lot of people are thinking this, like, well, it's not my job. I'm not their boss. Like, I mean, they should be able to notice that nobody is paying attention. Oh, Joni, I love it. Ask them, are they open to feedback? Joni, you are very wise because you're going to see in the model that we're going to go through in a few minutes how that is one of the keys. We can ask. Yes. All right. It looks like Curtis says for sure. Okay, Joni is very wise. Yeah, same thought, same thought. But look at not even the number of people that answer here. It's kind of like, oh, I don't know. There's a little fear there. Like, I don't know if I'm going to say anything. I don't really know. Now, how about like, okay, let's raise the stakes a little bit more. There is significant conflict between you and this person. What they're doing with their team is making it hard for you to get your job, and they're doing this, and there are lots of problems and tension between you and this other person. What do we do there? Now, most people, the reason I share these three examples is when the stakes are low, like, oh, you've got some broccoli in your tooth, or you got some toilet paper on your shoe. No problem. I'm going to, of course, tell you because the stakes are low. But the higher the stakes, specifically in the workplace, sometimes that fear causes us to freeze and not say anything, right? But it really doesn't matter in terms of accomplishing a noble, worthwhile goal if he's got toilet paper on his shoe. We could say something we didn't need to, but the challenges that we're having between two departments that is causing incivility between two different teams, it's slowing down our pace. Our collaboration is down. When the stakes are higher, people tend to have more fear and don't say anything. And all the reasons why MJ was talking about, there's huge costs to that. So I'll get back to my slides here. In the workplace, we need to teach our employees, our leaders, how to communicate bravely. The three biggest areas I've found in the work with my clients, Fortune 500 companies, is we need to learn the skill of speaking up with our ideas and concerns. When employees have an idea or concern, they need to feel confident to be able to speak up in groups and in one-on-one section, in one-on-ones. In the knowledge economy, it's essential that we tap into everyone's point of view so everyone is speaking up. So that's number one. Number two is having difficult conversations. When there is incivility, we've got to be able to address it. But just in general, anytime there's conflict, misalignment, or sensitive issues, anytime where everyone's like, uh-oh, there's a problem, we need to have the difficult conversation. It is scary to have the difficult conversation to address the problem. But when we don't address the problem, does it get worse or does it get better? Do things just magically get better if we ignore them? Wouldn't that be great? But it gets worse if we don't address it. And the third bucket, and I now have separated these two because I feel like they're different things in organizations, is giving constructive feedback. One of the challenges that leaders have is giving constructive feedback in the right way. Many times they're silent or it comes across too harsh, right? So these are the three areas where we need to build a capability within an organization for people to be brave communicators. Now, I know many of you are thinking of, wait a second, Jill, like we just need to create psychological safety. How many of you are thinking that? Like I teach psychological safety, Amy Edmondson's research all day long. It's so important. So yes, psychological safety is critical. So it is the leader's responsibility to create a psychologically safe environment so that people feel comfortable sharing their ideas, concerns, asking questions without fear of humiliation or punishment, right? That is very, very important. But psychological safety isn't the full solution. It's not enough. Why? Because some people don't have the skill. We're going to learn about voice efficacy in a moment. It doesn't guarantee people will speak up. I think of my daughter, my oldest daughter, Sydney. She is just one of those, she's one of the kindest souls in the world. I'm so proud of the person that she is. She's also one of the quietest, shyest, less likely to ever raise her hand in a group setting ever. Now, her grade teacher, Miss Manley, was the most inclusive leader, created psychological safety for anyone, but there is no way my daughter was going to ever raise her hand, right? And the same thing happens in the workplace, right? Leaders need to create psychological safety, but we need to go further than that so that all employees can learn the skills and the confidence to be brave in sharing their ideas, questions, or concerns. And the reason I bring that up, and now you're going, why is there a snake on here? Is I just want to cite some research by Albert Bandura that probably you all know so well, who really did the groundbreaking research on self-efficacy. So I bring this research up because he did this famous study on snakes. So if we talk about psychological safety, like, okay, like it's a safe environment. It's a safe environment. We tell everyone like, it's okay. It's okay. You should be able to speak up. But what Albert Bandura found in his research is that the only way you build confidence in a skill is by taking action. So when he was working with people with a phobia or a fear of snakes, this is why I have a snake on the screen here. And I'll take it off because some of you are going, I can't even concentrate on Jill because of the snake. So when he was helping people overcome a fear of snakes, instead of just telling them like, snakes are okay, they're lovely, they're pets, instead of just telling them all the reasons why snakes were not dangerous, what he found is the only way people could overcome the fear is he had to give them steps, each of them uncomfortable. Remember the definition of bravery? Taking voluntary action in the presence of fear toward that worthy goal. So what he did with these patients is he would show them a picture of snakes, then a video of snakes. Everyone, ugh, ugh. Then he brought a snake into the room, the far side of the room, in an aquarium, and then he brought it closer, and then he brought it closer, and then he brought it out. Eventually, they were handling the snakes. I just bring up Bandura's research on self-efficacy because we need to do more than just create a safe environment. We need to give people steps on how to do brave communications, and it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable, but as they practice the skill, their confidence emerges and they're going to become better. And when, if I think back to this COO of this cancer research company, if she would have learned those skills before she was a COO of the company, she would have avoided so much tension, so much stress, so many outbreaks that she had because she just didn't have the skill to be able to do that. So let's get back into now talking about, we'll go from self-efficacy to voice efficacy. It's your confidence to use your voice. So voice efficacy is defined is your belief that speaking up will make a difference. Now, it does matter what our leaders do. So I'm not saying voice efficacy only. I'm saying psychological safety is absolutely important, but there's two sides to the coin. If we really want people to use their voice, we need psychological safety that's created the responsibility of the leader, and we need to teach people how to speak up. And so without it, silence wins, even in safe cultures. And there are different factors that influence voice efficacy. You can see these personality traits, right? Peers, past success, leaders' responsiveness. But voice efficacy, we can say with certainty, grows when people are taught how, they practice, and then they see their value is inputted. So that is the skill that I believe we should be teaching our employees in all organizations so that we can move from silence to brave communications. And just in general, bravery in general, bravery is a skill, not a personality trait. It's considered a character. It's part of our character. It's a value that we have, right? But it can be strengthened over time. So bravery is a skill that we can all build. And simple frameworks can make tough conversations easier. Just like when I asked my two daughters, first time to make, a recipe or to make dinner, they're like, I have no idea what to do. But when I can give them the steps, when I give them the formula, it makes it easier. So training and practice turn fear into confident action. Expectations and team norms also influence team behavior. All right. Um, I want to give you this one practical I want to give you this one practical framework because I want to give you a practical tool before I wrap up and hand it back over to MJ. So, the last little piece of evidence before I give you the framework, this comes from Dr. David Yeager from University of Texas, Austin. I'm a huge fan of his work. What he has what he has researched is how the mindset of the person impacts their ability to speak up. So many times, and he specifically talks about leaders, they feel like they have this dilemma when there's an issue. Like, do I speak up, which creates conflict, harms relation as can be perceived as negative, or do I say stay silent to maintain relationships and harmony, but be perceived as weak? So a lot of people feel like they're being pulled in two directions. Am I a jerk or am I a softie? And it is not one or the other. There is the third choice, and this is the choice we should be making. And Dr. David Yeager calls it the mentor mindset. Um, it's having that brave conversation. It's what I teach to my clients in corporate America. Honest, caring conversations in service to the other person, right? Resulting in greater trust, respect, transparency, and higher performance. The kindest thing that we can do, that, to be honest and care enough is to address it, just like Captain Sinclair did with me. So here is the tool I want to share with all of you. So this is a feedback model, and it is designed to build voice efficacy. It has a positive impact on the person, giving them more confidence to deliver feedback or say anything that's hard for them to say. It also makes it easier for the other person to be on the receiving side. And I am happy, MJ, to share all of these slides with everyone afterwards. So we're not going to have enough time to go through everything in detail, but you'll have all these slides. But I want to highlight a few things specifically. This is what I call the poise model. So when you're going to have a difficult conversation or you're going to deliver feedback, do it with poise, right? Not incivility, do it with poise. You always need to start with the P, purpose and permission. So begin with what you and the other people want: growth, success, a stronger team, and ask permission to give the feedback, right? Now, most feedback models, and I've seen them all because I've been in corporate America for 25 years, usually it's just what you see afterwards. It's what's the observed behavior, what's the impact, and then let's talk about next steps. So we're used to those feedback models, but what precedes giving the feedback is the most important part that gives more confidence to the person giving the feedback and also makes the person receiving it more apt to receive it. In fact, based on the research of Dr. David Yeager, that's always cited by Adam Grant. A lot of people give credit to Adam Grant. It's Dr. David Yeager's research. If you begin with the purpose, the pure intent of your feedback, the other person is 40% more likely to be open to the feedback and change their behavior by just opening with the P. That's all we need to do. That's exactly what Captain Sinclair did for me. He didn't want me just to meet the minimum standards. He's like, I want you to be a successful Marine Corps officer, one of the first women ever to lead in a combat arm. And he's like, you need to, he pushed me, he gave me that feedback because he cared about my success. All right. So he led with that purpose first. And then you guys know the rest of this. You talk about the observed behavior, what you've noticed without judgment in both verbal and nonverbal, right? I have had to work really hard at making sure my nonverbal is also non-judgmental, if you're like me. And then you explore the impact of that behavior, and then you turn it into a conversation. Then you seek to understand, be open, curious, ask non-leading questions, listen to their perspective, and then you want to co-create a path forward that builds accountability and clarity. So that is the poise feedback model. It's something that you can actually train employees to do. You can give them common scenarios with customers, with tension between different people. And the feedback that I have gained from the clients that I've used this with is it significantly increases the confidence of leaders to deliver feedback and also significantly increases the confidence of employees to be able to have those difficult conversations with each other instead of staying silent, which leads to that incivility. So, how is this model different compared to how you normally give feedback? I'd love to see a few answers in the chat. What is different about this poise model? It started with the P, purpose and permission. It's kind of like a double P at the beginning. And it ends not just telling someone what they're going to do differently, but actually asking them, what their thoughts are. So those are the two things that usually come out when I ask this question. People are used to saying, okay, when I have to give feedback, what do I observe? What's the impact? What do you need to do differently? That sounds a lot like giving people orders. Here's what I saw you do. This is not good. Don't do it again. You can do that. You might be able to coerce them into the behavior you need them to do. But if you want to build trust, you want to build a relationship that elevates to a higher level, deliver feedback with poise. It takes about another 20 seconds and it's a game changer. These last two questions, this structure, instead of asking, I'm just going to tell, using poise drastically increases the voice efficacy of the giver. So I use this with my daughter, who's now 20 years old, right? She's 20 years old. She's off to college. She was in her first job this past summer. She's still the shy girl, never wants to say anything. There was a problem, like the assistant manager was changing her schedule last minute and really making her unhappy. And I taught her this poise model and just said, let's just outline how it might sound. Like you don't even have to say this, but let's just play with it. And so she came up with notes, some notes that aligned with the purpose. Like she just wants to be a great employee, but she also wants to be able to plan things on her own. So she did her P. She asked the permission. So she went through the POISE and came up with her plan. And she's like, I think I can do this. She did decide to do it over text, but that's okay. It worked, right? It worked. And instead of her being frustrated and leading to potential incivility when she went in, because if she would have gone into work, she was pissed. She was angry and she would have been that way. She had the conversation. I was so proud of her. So if my shy daughter Sydney, who has a hard time ever advocating for herself or say anything, can find her voice efficacy, I'm confident employees across the globe can as well. And it makes it easier for the receiver also when you open up with the purpose. The authors of Crucial Conversations, I'm a big fan of that book. They always say start with heart. So anytime we have a difficult conversation, that's the one little sticky thing I can leave with everyone is start with heart when it's a difficult conversation, like what is the purpose? What is the thing that you and the other person want? What is the goal? What is the higher why? I want us to have a better cross-functional relationship so we can drive results together to make the biggest impact on customers, right? I always start with the higher why, and you will start with heart first. Okay. So, in summary, bravery is one of the antidotes to workplace incivility, right? Because the reason why sometimes people are lash out, they are rude, is because they're frustrated because they didn't have the conversation earlier. So think of this instead of firefighting, putting out the fires of incivility. This is a little bit of fire prevention when we can teach everyone to be brave in their communications. So with that, a little bit about me. If anyone wants to hear more, if you want to connect with me, I just put my website and my email here. I'm happy to share any of my resources. MJ's got her book up. Thank you so much. The Bravery Effect. And with that, MJ, I'll pass it back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Jill. It was so nice to hear you speak from the heart and tell us real stories that we can relate to. And I think we see in the chat that people are appreciative of your presentation. Um, I loved your poise model. And I want to just give a little wink in Wendy Lynch's direction because she held the think tank yesterday on active listening and what it really means. And I think that in order to move from your S to your E, you said we got to listen.
Yes.
And I think that if we want to listen to understand and move from that step towards co-creation of the next steps, I think
Mm-hmm.
a very good thing to put in there is to reflect back what we've heard from the other person. Would you
Mm,
agree that this is a good
yeah.
a good segue between your S and your E?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we just have in there like seek to understand, but within that, it's teaching people the skill of active listening. Absolutely. Yes, and reflecting back. Yeah, great ad.
Now, what do you think is the best way? I know practice is the best way to progress, but what do you think is the best way for us to not be thinking, okay, I've done my double P's, the O, now it's the oh, yes, okay, I got to do the I, right? How does it become more natural? I
Yeah,
think
well,
the
that's why I try
chest
to give people
conversation
like the
was a
sticky
good way
thing
to
is
start.
just just think of like start with heart. Like what is the pure goodness in your heart of why you're addressing this challenge? Like and in the workplace, I'll sometimes give them like five different examples. Like I know how important this project is for you and your success. And because I care so much about your project being a successful, there's something I noticed that might hold it back. So like there's an example or I know you really want to get promoted to a leader next time. You're doing so many things well, but I made a promise that if ever I notice anything that you could do to elevate your skills, I'd mention it to you. Would you like to hear? So I find that sometimes if you take this back to your organizations, think of the specific role they're in and doing the P, the purpose is the hardest new skill for them to learn. So sometimes giving them different examples of what it might sound like helps. Or just for all of you, just think however I'm feeling about whatever difficult conversation, just look deep into your heart and go, what is the pure intent of this conversation that is both good for me and the other person and the organization? And do not allow yourself to open the conversation unless you're very clear on it. And this is an emotional intelligence strategy as well. Because many times our amygdalas took over, we're angry, and the reason why it leads to incivility is because we just react. So anytime you want to give the feedback, if you just have the discipline to say, look into my heart, what is the pure intent that's both good for me, the other person, and the organization? And until you can articulate it, you don't give the feedback. So it might take you 5 seconds, it might take you 10. Sometimes it takes me an hour, but I do not open a conversation until I can communicate that from my heart. And if you open with your heart, even if it's a difficult conversation, it's going to go pretty well. So that's my, I guess, one hint. You can really kind of screw up the rest of it and it's going to be okay. But if you open with the P, it usually goes pretty
Yes.
well.
Yes, the open with kindness, right?
Open with
The P
kindness.
is the kindness part.
That is it. Open with kindness. Yes.
Well, thank you so much. Jill, if you would put in the